We are going to do the presentation of driver license. It's going to be in English. I can translate that, or Jose is going to help me, but we are going to do this bilingual. Lo vamos a hacer de manera bilingüe. Ella, como les dije, ha hecho una investigación, trabajó con nosotros por 3 meses. Su única labor más importante fue poner algo comprensivo, algo que nos pueda guiar para la lucha de la licencia de conducir, que ya con Bacolao vamos a estar iniciando el próximo año. Ya tenemos la cumbre de inmigrantes el 4 de octubre. October 4th, we are going to have the 4th Virginia Immigrant Advocate Summit. We have over 200 people that are coming statewide. We are going to decide what issues we are going to fight during the General Assembly. So driver license is going to be one of them. So it's going to be up to us to move this through this process. Thank you, Theo, and please, you can go ahead and begin your presentation. A ver, un aplauso, por favor.
Thank you for having me. I'd like to thank Edgar for inviting me back. My name is Teofe Love, and I'm a law student at UVA. I spent my summer interning with the Legal Aid Justice Center. My summer was spent working on a campaign proposal and a research project on driver's licensing laws in Virginia for undocumented immigrants.
She's going to be translating, please call your name.
Oh, Teo Love.
Mi nombre es Teo. Estudié en la escuela de la Universidad de Virginia y pasé mi verano estudiando sobre las licencias para poder proveer licencias para las personas indocumentadas.
So I spent a lot of time on this issue, and the reason we had started this project, the reason Edgar asked me to work on this project is it's actually a really exciting time for this issue right now. Since 9/11, the laws for access to licenses for undocumented immigrants have become increasingly restricted. There was a real shift, and up until January of 2013, we only saw bad laws. And then we had something very exciting started happening in 2013. Since January, we've seen 7 states change their laws, and we're expecting several more to follow suit and expand access again. Now, why is this important? I'm going to present a proposal for a campaign, and I'm going to just tell you how I'm going to go through this presentation. But you can just...
Y trabajé mucho en este proyecto y porque especialmente es un tiempo muy excitante para estar trabajando en esta campaña de licencias. Desde el 2001, por lo del 9/11, las licencias para las personas indocumentadas han sido cortadas en muchos estados y no hemos visto un cambio real hasta ahora que 7 estados ya han cambiado las leyes y eso es algo que nos va a empujar a hacer muchos más cambios.
So I'm going to start off the proposal by presenting the reason why I think immigrant advocates should prioritize this issue, why I think this is important and how it impacts immigrant communities and why this should be a priority. I'm then going to discuss a national shift in the legislation in other states, and I'm going to kind of go through those experiences and what that means, and then I'm going to explain how we should frame this campaign moving forward.
Voy a tocar 3 puntos. El primer punto es por qué es importante que nosotros estemos priorizando hablar de licencias. La segunda es cómo ha cambiado la legislación en los estados que he mencionado. Y la tercera es qué es lo que vamos a hacer moviéndonos hacia el futuro.
So you have some handouts in your folder. I don't have a PowerPoint, I'm sorry about that, but if you guys want to just check these out, I've presented these so it's a little easier to follow. It's a lot of information. So I'm going to go over these very quickly, and then at the end, if you guys want to ask me questions, I think that would be a lot easier because there's just a lot of information here. If you want to flip to the back, the last page, you see a timeline of Virginia's driver's license restrictions in Virginia.
En la última página está un timeline, una línea de tiempo donde puede usted ver cómo cambió las licencias hasta ahora.
So this is the political history of this issue in Virginia, and this is important to know just as the background, because this is the context we're working in. So on September 11th, there were the 9/11 Commission found following 9/11 that 8 of the terrorists had obtained Virginia driver's identification cards issued by the DMV. Those IDs that were actually issued in accordance with federal regulations. Unfortunately, though, there was a lot of fear, and this led to a huge political backlash in the DMV and elsewhere that led to, by 2003, the passing of a legal presence law. As opposed to increasing the requirement for proof of residency, which that would have been a better way to secure and deal with the fraud issue. This legal presence law requires proof of legal status in order to apply for a driver's license in Virginia. And this is really terrible. This deprives immigrants of undocumented immigrants of driver's licenses. And then in 2010, there was a highly publicized accident. There's more information about this on here, but the accident resulted in the death of 2 nuns, and this was used by anti-immigrants to kind of publicize this and argue that there should be that the DMV should stop issuing driver's licenses to immigrants who do have EADs, employment authorization documents. So we can see that there's been a very tense political history on this issue. This is a tough environment to move on this issue. But why is it that I think that this issue is something we should move forward with?
La razón política por la cual no tenemos licencias acá en Virginia empezó en el 2001 cuando se cayó las Torres Gemelas. Se creó la comisión del 9/11 y ellos encontraron que 8 de los terroristas que estaban volando ese avión habían obtenido un ID del estado de Virginia. Y siguiendo a eso, hubo también otro accidente donde 2 monjas murieron en un accidente de auto. Entonces, desde ese momento, políticamente el clima no está muy estable, entonces cambiaron las leyes. Pero voy a hablar porque yo creo que es importante que tenemos que cambiar ese pensamiento político.
If you see another slide that says how driving without a license can lead to deportation, one of the reasons I became this research paper, it really means so much to me, is because I was looking into how this law actually plays out. It's actually part of a much more extensive system in which undocumented immigrants are marginalized and then ultimately put at risk of being deported, and families are torn apart, communities are destabilized, and it's quite amazing if you heard about the record numbers of deportations, like everyone in the country now knows about, like in the past couple of years. A lot of people who were being deported, in fact more than 50% of the people being deported were either deported for minor traffic violations or minor crimes like traffic violations, driving without a license as a misdemeanor, or they had no criminal history whatsoever. So the question is, how are people who have no criminal history or who are pulled over for traffic violations, how are they being deported? How are they how are they made vulnerable to ICE? How are they being picked up? And the answer is driving without a license because of licensing laws that make it a misdemeanor to drive without a license. And I'll explain further.
Si pueden ver en esta página dice cómo manejar sin licencia causa una deportación, y esa es una de las cosas que ha sido una gran parte de su proyecto, porque más del 50% de las personas que han sido deportadas hasta hoy es porque no tenían licencias. Y si preguntas por qué, si no tenían un récord criminal o si no han estado en detención antes, porque están tantas personas en deportación, y es porque estaban manejando sin licencias. Entonces voy a explicar ahora cómo podemos cambiar.
So, how this is working, how this criminalization of just the everyday conduct, driving your children to school, going to work, this does is that this makes undocumented immigrants vulnerable to being identified by ICE because they might be put in jail at some point if they get a second charge, or if they don't have any other form of identification when they're pulled over, they might just be booked into a jail, even if it's any contact whatsoever, because of 2 federal information sharing programs. ICE has been notified of that individual's legal presence, legal status. And so this has been the main mechanism in which we've seen the federal government, it really moving along with the deportation of people for minor crimes or no crimes, no criminal activity whatsoever, driving turning, running a red light. That's not a good policy. So this is important, and this really impacts lives, and it's actually the main way people seems to be coming into contact with ICE. So the reason why I also think that even though we know this is important to communities, and clearly this is hurting and undocumented immigrants and hurting communities and families, why is it that now is the moment to move on this issue, considering the political history that we've seen in Virginia? And then,
una de las razones más para añadir es que estamos viendo que nuestras comunidades inmigrantes indocumentadas están siendo criminalizadas y por esa razón deportadas por no tener una licencia. Estamos viendo esto mucho más y es importante para mí hablar de esto.
Okay, well, there's more details on here, but the point
Pero mucha de la información está aquí en estos papeles y solo está hablando de lo importante que es hablar de lo que está pasando con las licencias y cómo esto influye a la criminalización de nuestra comunidad y por qué esto no es justo.
Well, the reason I think now is actually a great time to move on this issue is because of this dramatic shift in the national political landscape that we've seen since January of this year.
Desde enero hemos visto un clima político que está cambiando. Entonces, por eso yo creo que es importante que actuemos más bien en tratar de animar a la gente a aprender más sobre las licencias.
So, since January, we've seen 7 states change their laws, and DC and California are expected to follow suit. Moreover, we even saw bills that, even in places where the bill failed, we saw some interesting developments in very, very similar states to Virginia. In North Carolina, there was a bill presented by 4 Republicans that did fail, and there was some very bad legislation involved with that. But what we can learn from this is that there's a changing, the discourse, the way they're framing this issue, the way this issue is being discussed is no longer solely about security or terrorism. There is a changing framework. Advocates have been moving this issue, and there's been information and research produced in other states that means now it is becoming increasingly harder for people to dismiss the idea that this is a public safety issue. And in fact, in Virginia right now, because of what's been going on in the region with Maryland and DC, it would be impossible for them to ignore that aspect of the conversation. This would mean it would be a much more constructive conversation.
Desde enero hemos visto que 2 estados, California y
And there's 7.
California y DC, hay otros 7 estados que han cambiado sus pólizas, pero lo que es importante saber es que las leyes que están implementadas ahora y porque por los cambios en la región, la conversación está cambiando y debe cambiar hacia las en esta página, si pueden ver, es uno de los problemas que está pasando es que no hablan sobre lo que puede pasar si la gente está manejando sin licencias. Y eso nos preocupa mucho porque pueden haber accidentes porque no hay acceso a las licencias. Entonces, de ese modo, lo que tenemos que hacer es informar a la gente de lo que está pasando y ahora es un momento donde tenemos que hacerlo.
So, why have we seen such a change? Why have so many states changed their laws, and how has this dramatic shift come about? Well, because this issue is actually an issue that it can be understood as an issue that matters for everyone. There are benefits for everyone in expanding access, and there's an increasing body of knowledge on this as research is conducted in all these states. For one, this is really primarily a public safety issue. National reports done by AAA, the AAA Foundation for Safety, found that unlicensed drivers are far more likely to get involved in a fatal accident, 5 times more likely. Other reports done in California found that many accidents that found similar results, also dramatic, and these kind of statistics are really important. And now this issue has come up in every single state in which this issue is debated.
Hay muchos estados que han estado buscando información sobre la gente que maneja sin licencias y la mayoría de esas personas 5 veces más del tiempo pueden estar en accidentes y eso es importante saber porque deberían tener licencias. Y muchos más estados han estado
by national insurance groups and research done in other states that have shown that actually people are paying more for their insurance rates because of the risk posed by unlicensed drivers and the cost of paying out to insurance companies paying out for unlicensed drivers, uninsured drivers. So,
todos saben lo que es insurance para su póliza del auto, lo que pagan. Eso está subiendo porque nosotros, muchos de los que manejan no tenemos licencias porque somos indocumentados. Entonces, eso es algo que las pólizas, los mismos grupos que nos están vendiendo esto, están encontrando que pueden subir sus precios porque hay muchas personas que están violando esta supuestamente ley.
Yeah, and so the facts and figures, if you want to see some of these numbers that have come out, I mean, they're really significant. When you see things like, you have estimates for Virginia's population, you have an idea of how many people might be driving on the road unlicensed, and then you find out that, those people who have not gone through the test or the exams and had been given training as to the safety traffic rules, they're 5 times more likely to get involved in a fatal accident. You have 11% of drivers in Virginia were uninsured in 2009. 14% of all accidents are caused by uninsured drivers, and you have $41 billion in insurance losses per year. These kind of numbers are huge, and they've really mattered in the debates in every state, even those where the bill failed.
Aquí en este paquete tienen muchos números de estadísticas de lo que está pasando ahora y la cosa es que no, licencia o no, cuando usted toma el examen es un tipo de entrenamiento y ese entrenamiento es vital para poder manejar. Entonces cuando uno no tiene ese entrenamiento, no pasó el examen, no estudió, entonces tiene mucho más chance de estar en un accidente. Entonces aquí tiene los números en este paquete.
And lastly, it's better for everyone in terms of law enforcement as a public safety measure. Even law enforcement agencies can understand that this is actually better for administering it. First of all, with regards to drivers on the road, many police officer associations in other states and officials have come out publicly saying that they are very much in support of having better trained drivers on the road. And also, having uninsured drivers means you have more hit and runs and other problems, and it makes their jobs more difficult when they can't find people because you cannot contact people, people are afraid to talk to them. These are issues that law enforcement officers, even if they might not immediately be understanding the issue this way, when asked how is the complications of having unlicensed drivers on the road, it becomes kind of clear. Their job is harder. Public safety is challenged, and enforcement can be brought on board on this, and they have in other states.
Y la última razón por qué es tan importante es incluso para el trabajo de los policías. Les da mucho más trabajo interrogar a una persona que no tiene licencia porque uno tiene miedo, no va a poder decir lo que está pasando y dos porque ellos mismos han estado diciendo que se sentirían mucho mejor si hubiera todas las personas tuvieran licencias. Entonces, esta es una de las razones más porque este es el tiempo de hablar de licencias para personas indocumentadas.
So, just in conclusion, I just want to say that this is the reason I think this is the moment to move is because we can control the conversation. We can really, in Virginia, and this is important, this is the first time where a national trend is going to help us control the conversation, which in Virginia has been so antagonistic towards undocumented immigrants. This is the time to move, and even if this issue doesn't move in this immediate cycle, in this year, maybe the General Assembly this year is not going to get it through, starting this conversation is important, not just for expanding access to driver's licenses, but moving the conversation forward on comprehensive immigration reform. It introduces a new paradigm in which the interests of undocumented immigrants are not in opposition to the interests of everyone else. Everyone benefits from when people are provided the same means to do things legally and participate fully. But when we marginalize undocumented immigrants, in fact, everyone suffers. And this is a paradigm that needs to be pushed in Virginia. And we can move it. And this is a really great opportunity to do that. Thank you.
Últimamente dijo que es importante porque no tenemos que dejar que nuestras comunidades sean marginalizadas por esta causa de no tener licencias. Y más todavía que nacionalmente estamos hablando de una reforma migratoria. Y es importante incluir esto en las conversaciones que tenemos cuando estamos hablando de la reforma migratoria. Por ahí no pase hoy, por ahí no pase este año, pero tenemos que empezar a hablar de eso porque esto es igualmente importante para que nosotros no estemos criminalizados o marginalizados.
Gracias, Jared. Gracias, Theo. Thank you very much. There is a translation. There are many technical words, muchas palabras técnicas, pero se hizo una buena traducción. Y lo que aquí quedaría bien claro es esto, ¿no? De que la conversación sobre la licencia de conducir está cambiando a nivel de todo el país. Y hay varios estados, incluyendo Maryland, incluyendo Washington, D.C., que todavía no ha pasado en Washington, pero ya está a punto de pasar. Y hay otros estados como California, que ha cambiado bastante. Entonces, la conversación está girando en torno a lo que es seguridad. Es más seguro tener una persona con licencia de conducir que una persona sin licencia de conducir en las autopistas. Y obviamente ese es el discurso que va con nosotros. Y otra cosa que también está cambiando es la cuestión económica. Vale más que las personas manejen, se desplacen a sus trabajos con carros, que sean más eficientes, mucho más rápido, a que estar realmente quizás trabajadores esperando en las esquinas, trabajadores que no pueden comprar carros, que no pueden llevar a sus familiares. Es increíble. Entonces, quiero agradecerle bastante a Theo por esta presentación y realmente hemos comenzado el debate de la licencia de conducir y yo creo que va a ser fuerte, pero vamos a intentarlo.